Welcome back once again to the Pittsburgh Sports Cast, where two college students discuss all things Pittsburgh sports all year round. My name is Ryan,
And I'm Chris.
and today we are going to be going back into baseball. Of course, there's been a myriad of negotiations between the players and the owners that have been going on these past few weeks, and I just figured, it would be the time to address it because there seems to have been more and more setbacks as the negotiations go on. It seems like they're going backwards and not forward. So basically, the gist of this is well, today the MLB players proposed a 114 game season of with prorated salaries and all the works. And the owners, not only did the owners reject the offer, but the owners did not propose a counter offer. They remained set on a shorter season, still with prorated salaries, because that's what the players asked for. But the season would only be about 50 or 60 games. So, yeah, Chris, not looking good.
No, I think realistically, I do not think we're gonna have baseball this season. Um, I just think the sides are too far apart at the moment. Um, I think the interesting question is who's to blame? Who's to blame? The owners or the players? Who do you think?
I really think both sides are to blame, honestly. Yes, I mean, yes, the owners are billionaires and yes, the players are millionaires, but that's the point. I mean, we have millionaires arguing with billionaires about, just um what amounts to them as kind of pocket change, really. I mean, the owners aren't going to be in bankruptcy if they lose a bit. Um the players won't make any money this season if they don't play, but they still have a bunch of money. At least most of them do. Obviously, if you make league minimum, this will hurt you a bit more. But you know, I mean, it's hard to find sympathy with either side here because it's just frustrating. Um, yeah, I wasn't around in '94, but it seemed the attitude at that time was that fans just hated both sides, and it caused this divide of people who did take a side. Um, well, what's the problem with baseball and why they need to have a season is there's not going to be a big steroid era and a home run chase, a home run battle to bring all the fans back. What are you gonna do now? You're left to dry. It's both sides are to blame.
I think it's frustrating for a lot of people. I think because it's not like I think it would be understandable if players were like, "Oh, coronavirus, we aren't going to play because of the coronavirus and things of that nature." But that's not true. They're not going to play because of money, and I think that's a really, really bad look. For everyone involved, and that's owners and players. It's one thing not to play because you're afraid of coronavirus or afraid of getting sick. It's a completely different reason not to play because of, like you said, millionaires arguing with billionaires because you're not getting that money. And I understand the argument from the player standpoint that they only have a finite time to make that money. And to an extent, I agree with that. But when you see so many people who are unemployed, there are around 40 million people in the United States who are unemployed, don't, realistically are living paycheck to paycheck and you don't want to play baseball because you're not going to get your full salary, where waitresses and other businesses that weren't deemed essential, got laid off and they don't have a paycheck. I think it just makes baseball look like a whole bunch of spoiled babies. Um, I don't. I'm with you. I don't inherently know how baseball's going to overcome this. Um, I think interest in baseball has been going downhill for the past couple years, and I don't know how you can recover it, especially with the other sports coming back. You know what I'm saying? Because before baseball had what, more or less mid June until August until football came back all to
Yeah,
itself.
they had a monopoly on sports pretty much.
They had a monopoly on sports, which now no longer exists, right? Because even if they were going to come back, they were going to face football, they were going to face hockey, they were going to face the NBA, they were going to face other sports that they normally don't have to face. And that was something, even if the deal went through, baseball was going to have to figure out how does it compete with all these other sports that realistically are more popular than baseball. Now there is no baseball. Baseball looks like it's not going to happen unless you want to watch some Korean baseball. And you have the NHL and NBA who both have plans, past plans by players to get into the league. I mean, to like restart the league and get back into the playoffs and finish up their seasons and then do the drafts and everything they need to do in those leagues. And baseball's just going to sit there. Football looks like it's going to really realistically change at all, except with the fans. You know, looks like football's going to be playing exactly where when it's supposed to be played. So right now, baseball's only hurting itself by its self-centeredness, which I think it could be. I think both can be blamed, but I think it looks worse on the players' sides.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like I said, the players are obviously selfish, but I think the owners, I think they're kind of reaching a bit, because of, um, you know, so one of the earliest proposals that the owners made was a 50-50 revenue split between
Correct.
the owners and the players. And I think that really missed the mark because if you look at, most other companies, even if you look at the sports leagues, sports leagues generate billions upon billions of dollars every year. And how much of those profits, other than the salaries that they're already guaranteed, how much of those profits do those players get in a normal booming year? Absolutely none. But now they wait until they're losing money. Okay, now they're going to revenue split with the players. I just don't get it.
Well, you have to look at the money that the teams are losing too here. I mean, it's not cheap change. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they're losing legitimately billions of dollars. Because remember, because even if baseball does come back, um, there aren't going to be fans. So that means no concession money, no ticket sales. Probably not a lot of jersey sales because a lot of fans go into the stadium to get their jerseys. Not saying like you can't get your jersey at Dick's Sporting Goods or anything, but that's not where a lot of, fans get their jerseys. So they're gonna lose on all of that, and I think that takes a bigger toll than I think people are realizing.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I just think it's really hard to sympathize with either side. Um, because even though the owners are losing billions, they have like 10 or 5 to 10 times as much money as they're going to lose. I realize that net worth isn't just money you can spend right away, but uh,
Well, I think also what I think people are forgetting too, and I don't want to stereotype at all, but let's be real. Those billionaire businessmen, are billionaires because they're heartless SOBs, right? Again, that's not everyone. There, I'm sure, really good and nice billionaires out there. But in real talk, the majority of them have no issue stabbing people in the back. They have no issue, doing whatever it takes to get their money. And that's just the reality of the situation. And even when it comes to this, the owners are going to react the same way that they always have. I just think people as a whole, and I'm talking your average everyday Joe like you and me, don't necessarily take those owners as like real people in a lot of ways because they make so much more money. But in reality, a lot of players come from poor backgrounds. They worked really hard to get to where they are. And I think it's just easier to be mad at them for being so self-centered than it is for the billionaires. Because especially we're taught in American culture, you play a professional sport, you become a professional athlete because you love the game, you love to win, you love whatever sport you're playing. And now you're saying, well, I really don't love the sport. I'm not going to do what I love unless I get all my money. Even if I have to take a pay cut, I'm not going to do that. And I think it just looks really, really bad, especially going back to the whole Astros situation. Where their players looked bad to begin with there. And now here, I just think for the average person, I think the players just look so spoiled. They look so bad here, opposed to billionaire owners who, realistically, a lot of people have theorized they just stab people in the back anyway. That's how they got to where they are.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way to view it, as more of uh, a symptom of of ownership rather than change in like the thought process, because obviously the owners will do whatever they can. I mean, several owners have said outright they'd rather not play because they will lose less money not playing than playing with no fans or playing under this sort of climate. Obviously, the league itself wants to play as well, because they're losing how many millions of dollars in playoff TV revenue. It's one of the reasons why the owners proposed a 50-60 game season, because the owners actually are concerned that there could be a second wave hitting around November. And so that's one of the big reasons why they rejected the 114 game plan made by the players, because if the second wave does indeed hit around November, then you play all those regular season games and you get absolutely nothing out of it, and even more money is lost, especially considering all the postseason TV revenue that you're losing out on. That's why they want to play 50-60 games, so they can
But
definitely get a playoffs in.
but if you're a
But
player, and in particular a pitcher here, why would you sign up for that? Like, what
exactly.
incentive do you have? Like, if
Uh,
you're a pitcher, and realistically, what you have to pitch once every 5 days in a 50-game season, what you're only getting 10 starts,
10
and if it's
starts?
60, you're getting 12. So if you're Garrett Cole, or okay, Garrett Cole's a bad example. If you're a mediocre pitcher, let's say a pitcher who's on the borderline of making it, or maybe you're in the last year of your rookie contract and trying to get paid, right? Why would you want 10 to 12 games? If you're a pitcher, why would you ever sign up for that?
Yeah, I mean, um, and then of course there was that other issue where the owners proposed the scaled pay, where players who made more money made a smaller percentage of their traditional salaries compared to players who made league minimum, who got pretty much a true prorated salary. So I mean, that's another symptom of owners just being, you know, Scrooge McDuck SOBs, for lack of a better term. It's just, man, it's just frustrating, because you look every other league. The NBA just this past week came out. Obviously, the NBA this past week came out with their proposal. They have a playoff proposal ready. The NHL's had one for a week or two now. Even the MLS today signed. I know we usually have nothing to do with that, but even they have a plan to come back. They signed a new CBA even. So literally every other league is in a position to resume or to start in the NFL's case. And the Major League Baseball is sitting around arguing, quabbling over money, while the other leagues are getting their crap together.
Yeah, but I think I will say this though. Baseball's in a more difficult position, I think, because their season hasn't started yet. and they still play so many games. So like the NFL only plays 16 games, realistically 16 times on a Sunday, on 16 Sundays, unless you're a really good team and you get some Monday night slots. But aside from that, I mean, they don't really need to argue over money because it's only 16 games, and then realistically, it looks like sports will be back. But with the MLB, their season never got to start, and their season's so long and so tedious that it was going to be impossible to play 162 games once the season got delayed. They were only going to be able to play a new amount. So I understand they're in a more difficult position because they're gonna have to play less games with fans where they get a lot of their revenue from. So I get where they're in a more difficult position because they just have more variables than like the NHL or NFL. I mean, or NBA, who realistically had their entire seasons more or less played except for a handful of games, and they just got to decide the playoffs. You know, it'll be interesting when the NHL and NBA seasons end, playoffs end, and they award their champions, and then they got to go figure out how to restart the next season. It'll be interesting to see how those negotiations go. You know, will they be able to play 82 games in those seasons, or will they have to downgrade games? And also remember, the NFL and NHL have salary caps, where the MLB doesn't. So I think it's a lot easier for the MLB to fight on money because of the lack of salary cap than it will be for the rest of the other leagues,
Yeah,
mainly the
especially
NBA and NHL.
yeah, especially because I think one of the reasons that the MLB, I don't think the MLB will be getting salary caps anytime soon unless they lose an entire season. Something drastic has to be done because usually they claim that obviously the players don't want a salary cap because they want to make boatloads of money. But usually a lot of people say, well, the owners, they would want a salary cap because that means they don't have to spend all that money. But as a matter of fact, a salary cap a lot of times is what owners don't want also, because with a salary cap comes a salary floor, which is usually
Correct.
not too far away from the cap. And if you look at an owner like Bob Nutting or another small market owner like the Derek Jeter ownership group in Miami, who isn't spending either, they they're not spending anything close to whatever a hypothetical salary floor would be in a Major League Baseball. I mean, had COVID-19 not happened, the Pirates' payroll was like under $50 million.
That's a
No
joke.
joke. So that's nowhere near what a salary floor would be. And so all those small market owners would then have to pay more compared to the fewer big market owners who would get to benefit by not having to pay as much or have as large of a payroll. So neither side really wants a salary cap at this point. Obviously, the only thing that got the NHL the salary cap, or yeah, what got the NHL the salary cap was the 04-05 lockout,
Lockout.
and they realized that anything had to be done once they lost the whole season. So if this season is lost, I think that there will be a greater chance that they could have a salary cap, maybe. But who knows about that? One thing's for sure, though, because another week has come and gone, all these weeks have come and gone, should a deal be made, the season will certainly not start in early July, because that was the plan. If they had gotten a deal done in the past 2 or 3 weeks, they would have gone to spring training, likely in home cities, either this week or next week. And by the first week of July, that would have been opening day. And, we could have had a great start to everything. But of course, we're not seeing that, unfortunately.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, the MLBPA, when they put their not bid in, but their plan in, their start date was June 31st, correct?
Yeah, July 1st, I think.
Or July 1st? Okay.
Something like that. June 31st, July 1st, whatever.
Yeah, that's just a day. Well, they're only 30 days in June, so it'd be June 30th. But that's beside the point.
Boy. Calendar
Um,
lessons, ladies and gentlemen.
But yeah, I think. And so, how do you think the rest of the world looks at the MLB because of this?
I think obviously this is a big blow. I honestly think that MLB could very soon wind up fifth in the pecking order. Yes, fifth. Because here's the thing, Chris. You and I, we don't talk about it often here because it's not really relevant to this podcast, but we're both soccer fans, right?
Huge soccer fans.
Exactly. Well, here's the thing. Uh, Soccer is back, albeit not in America, but in other countries right now. Um, it's coming back, and um, even irregardless of that, it's one of the sports that is gaining in viewership and in terms of people in America following it. Uh, you know, there have been statistical studies and polls that have revealed that the younger generation tends to like soccer more than baseball. So not only would baseball be falling behind hockey in the four-horse race, but they would. I honestly think that you know more people will become soccer fans because they can watch the German league right now. The EPL's coming back in a couple of weeks. Um, I think that baseball is really going to get hurt. And also the added fact of the NBA starting next season in December, which means that the NBA finals and the NBA playoffs would go against the MLB regular season, which means the MLB essentially loses that monopoly that they had a stronghold on. So it just keeps getting worse and worse for them.
Yeah, because especially, and anytime we can mention the NBA, I think we can mention the NHL too, because they're going to be on very similar timelines. I think that's how things are working out. Looks like they're going to start on very similar timelines, that will probably end on very similar timelines, which means that the NBA season starts in December. There's a really good chance that the NHL season starts in December. So not only baseball loses that monopoly to one sport, they're going to lose a monopoly to two sports.
It's incredible. And it's gonna and that's the thing what I've been saying to the owners who say that they are going to lose all of this money if they play the season. They're going to lose even more money if they don't play because in the long term, people are going to stop watching and people are going to forget about it, as has been the trend ever since uh, the Mitchell report in 2006 when the steroid users were all revealed and it became apparent to fans that the home run race they were watching was a fraud with cheating and illegal use of substances and whatnot. That lost a lot of fans, and it's been in decline ever since. And now that decline's about to be exacerbated even further. It's just 150 years almost of Major League Baseball, and it's gone down the drain.
And not only the lockout, I think I go back to the Astros situation. I think that hurt too,
Oh
because
yes,
even fans who might have been on the fence now are saying, "Why would I watch a league that we know's rigged?" Or
exactly.
not known rigged, but players are not being good, to
And they're
say
not
the
being punished for it either because
right,
of
which was the
Rob
big
Manfred's inability to stand up for his league and put his foot down. And as well as all the other changes that he's made in the name of trying to modernize the game. You know, we're looking at stuff like pitch clock, stuff like the mandatory three batter rule, which was set to go into effect this year. That's kind of been lost in the fray because of this. Um,
what's the three batter rule? I haven't heard of that.
that's so starting this year. Well, originally, obviously not now, but well, if the season happens, then it will start this year. Relievers have to face at least three batters when they come into the game, or they have to finish the inning. So they could face one or two batters if they come in with two outs and get three outs. But once they come in, they have to either finish the inning or face 3 batters before they can get taken out. Or if they get hurt, obviously, then you can take them out. That's the 3-batter rule. So there's
Really?
no such thing as a lefty specialist who comes in whenever, like, you know, insert powerful lefty pull hitter comes up and they bring in the lefty for 1 batter to get him out. That's a thing of the past now because of this rule that they reinstated. And he says that it's to speed up the game, but, you know, it just seems to get worse and worse. And also, there's that subset of fans that are set to disavow the game because of the universal DH, which is definitely going to be a thing if this season goes on. It's going to at least be a 1-year thing, although I wouldn't be surprised if it was made permanent after this season, should it go on. I mean, I wouldn't care. I mean, me personally, I'm against the designated hitter, but it's not something that would make me stop watching if it was universal. But I know there are many fans that would stop watching if they had to watch games with a DH. So it just seems that universal DH will cause more fans to leave than it will fans bring in or retain. That's my thought on universal DH.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I personally like the idea of the universal DH. Because I don't. I mean, realistically, a good pitcher hits like 100, so that means they get a hit once every 10 at bats, and realistically, most pitchers are automatic outs. So I don't mind the DH. Um, and for the fans who will say like, "Oh, I'm going to lead the game," I would call them out on it. I don't necessarily know how many fans are actually going to leave because of the DH. I think a lot of fans are going to leave because of the negotiations going horrendously. But I don't know how many are going to leave because of because of the DH, because the AL has it. So it's not like, oh, this is an entirely new thing. The American
Yeah,
League
I
has had it.
mean,
The American League fans have had it, and they seem to adapt pretty well. I'm sure there might be a few fans who get ticked off, but at the end of the day, I think they'll get over it.
yeah, that would be the hope. I'm just always concerned because I can't tell you how many times I've watched Bob Walk go on a DH rant, followed by hashtag ban the DH trending for 3 more days.
Oh,
Um, I mean, you gotta love Bob Walk and his passion for pitchers being able to hit. It makes me
true.
smile every time. But um, I think that remains. I think it's just a gripe that it's one of those things like how people will complain about something and yet they will still continue to partake in the thing that they are complaining about despite complaining about it.
Yep.
I think it probably will be one of those situations.
Yeah,
Hopefully, if it is universal.
I would agree with that. It'll be like, I hate the DH. This is so stupid. Are you gonna watch a Pirate game? Yep. Like, okay, hon. Okay.
Yep. So I just hope that something happens, something clicks, because despite the fact that negotiations weren't exactly moving forward, both sides for the up until like today or the past few days have remained optimistic that something was going to happen. But today, with the rejection of that proposal, the outright rejection and lack of counter of a proposal that the players made, it just seems less and less likely that we're going to have a season. And that will cause irreparable damages. Like I said, it's not like 94 where you have this steroid fueled home run chase to bring all the fans back. Now you have no way to bring the fans back unless you juice the ball again.
Yeah, I agree. I think the MLB is gonna have major issues trying to regain some of its fan base. Now, there's always gonna be fans who will always stick around and because they love the game, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, I think they will lose a lot of fans because it's just a bad look whether you blame the owners or the players. It's a bad look when you lose a season over money.
Yeah, we saw what it did to the NHL.
Right.
They're still recovering. They
They're
still
still recovering, and it's been what? How many years now?
15, 16 years. Yeah.
So yeah, not good. MLB is
Yeah.
not in a good.
Yeah. So moving into other baseball news. So remember how everyone loved when the Pirates went on that 10-game win streak in 2018 and they suddenly became buyers at the trade deadline. So they made an at the time critically acclaimed trade for what they believed to be an ace pitcher who still had his prime left. And they traded away what they thought were busted prospects for this piece that they thought would get them to the playoffs. But it turned out that pitcher turned out to be the one that was a total bust. And the prospects whom they thought were bust were proven to be playing in the wrong system and flourished once they went to a system that knew how to utilize them. I'm talking, of course, about the infamous Chris Archer trade, which continues to get worse and worse as it was revealed earlier this morning. This is being recorded on June 3rd. That Chris Archer is going to need surgery again. He's going to not be ready until 2021. And another frustrating moment for the Pirates, Chris.
I think there's a lot to be frustrated about when it comes to this stupid trade. Um, I think it's important when we talk about the trade. There wasn't a lot of complaining um, when the trade first happened because the prospects were not performing. Because if you remember back when I believe the trade was Austin Meadows and Tyler Glasnow for Chris Archer.
Yeah.
Now, Tyler Glasnow could not pitch more than an inning without giving up 5 runs at the time of him being a Pirate. That was just what he was doing. And Austin Meadows was all right, but we still had McCutchen and we still had some other players um, who in the we had a crowded outfield, and Meadows played in the outfield. So it was going to be difficult for him to get playing time. I do believe that. Granted, we did trade like half the outfield after that, but that's
McCutchen
kind
was
of
already
besides.
traded, I think, though.
Was he?
Yeah, he was. He was traded in 2017. This trade happened in 18.
Well,
But they
either
did
way,
have a crowded outfield, though.
yeah. The point stands that the outfield was very crowded.
It was because they even had Reynolds coming up because they got Reynolds in the McCutchen trade.
Okay, yeah.
So the point still stands.
Um, yeah, but the point still stands that it's a crowded outfield, and realistically, he wasn't going to play anywhere um, soon. So at the time, and like I said, with Glasnow struggling, I think a lot of people understood the trade of it. We needed a pitcher, and we had just won 10 games, and we might be able to do something. So I think a lot of people understood the trade. Now the issue is it was an utter failure because he didn't do anything. He came and he really really struggled. And I even remember the first game at home, people gave him a standing ovation because he was touted as this like Hall of Fame pitcher who's going to change the Pittsburgh Pirates and bring them back into
Yeah.
contention. And realistically, as we know, that didn't happen. I think honestly the worst trade that Huntington made was the Garrett Cole trade. We got absolutely nothing for Garrett Cole. Zip,
Colin
zero.
Moran,
Yeah,
whoop-de-doo.
we got Colin. And no offense to Colin Moran, seems like a great guy. Don't know him personally, but he seems very quiet. No one seems to complain about him. Might be an excellent individual. But on the baseball field, he is as slow as my grandmother, who's 89 years old. And he's maximum, I think, hit 250.
Heck, he's
And
slow as my grandmother. She's dead.
yeah, exactly. And not to mention that we gave up a pitcher who's now making $300 million. Granted, it's with the Yankees now, but that is how talented he was. We gave away a pitcher worth $300 million, and we got squat for him. And I think that's a bigger travesty than the Chris Archer trade. Because, yes, Glasnow was like a potential Cy Young winner, and that's frustrating and all. But we did strip him to Tampa Bay, and Tampa doesn't spend a lot of money, and they don't have any fans. At least I go to their baseball games. So, I mean, at least you didn't ship him off somewhere, that could really hurt us. So I guess that's a positive. But I understand the frustration with the Archer trade. My whole point, just to reiterate, would be, at the time, it was a good trade because both players were awful that we gave up. At the time, obviously, they had potential, clearly. And, we got, at the time, which was a good pitcher. My bigger travesty is the flipping Garrett Cole trade because, man, we got nothing for an all-star.
Yeah, I know. And I think this in the Archer trade, I think I blame the Pirates coaching staff at that time more than anything else. Because Ray Searage, obviously, what worked, whatever he was doing, that whole pitch to contact thing and minimizing pitch counts, it worked in that 3-year window of glory from 2013 to 15. But then, of course, the game evolves, and Ray Searage did not evolve with the game. So he had Garrett Cole and his entire pitching staff keeping to this whole pitch to contact philosophy, while the juiced up baseballs were all flying out of the park. If you remember, Garrett Cole was giving up, it seemed at one point, an average of 3 home runs a start. In the 16 and 17, his last 2 years with us, after having a monster year in 2015, where he was, I think, a top 5 Cy Young candidate, legitimately. And it did seem as though he was, kind of falling off a bit. And the same thing went with Tyler Glasnow. How it didn't seem like he had it. But after they were traded to other teams, it was proved that the Pirates were just simply unable and unwilling to budge from their system, even if it meant better utilizing the talent they had. Because if you look, Garrett Cole has thrown substantially more breaking balls in 18 and 19 with the Astros than he had in his entire years with the Pirates. And part of that is Ray Sturridge's pitch to contact philosophy, which doesn't fit Garrett Cole's repertoire and his incredible breaking stuff that he has that he wasn't able to use. Same goes with Tyler Glasnow and that philosophy, because both are using noticeably different styles and noticeably different sequences with their other teams than were being used with the Pirates. So yes, those trades were bad. Yes, Neil Huntington should have done better. But how is Neil Huntington supposed to realize how good these guys were supposed to be when our coaching staff wasn't enabling those guys to fulfill their potential in the fullest way? That is my gripe with this whole thing. Because yeah.
Well, I don't know, right? Because yes, did Searage probably ruin some guys? Because you can even look at like a guy like Charlie Morton, right, who went on to be integral in that Astros winning the World Series. I forget which one.
17.
And then he
series.
went and he's at Tampa Bay, and he did well for a contending Tampa Bay team. So there are other examples. My issue, though, well, because with the Ray Searage thing, yes, should he have probably changed? Yes, I'm not going to tell you he shouldn't have, but he should. But if you're a Huntington, the regime, that current regime, had brought the Pirates out of 21 years of losing to being contenders again. So I can understand why he wouldn't question them, because it seemed like they were close. Even with Searage maybe losing some of his stuff, he still got their pitchers for the most part to be good enough that they could be contenders. And not to mention, all of the nobodies that he developed, like Francisco Liriano struggled and then became a pirate. Ivan Novers was horrendous and then he was good with us.
AJ
Um,
Burnett,
AJ Burnett.
J.
Who's the guy?
Happ,
J.A. Happ. J.A. Happ was
Edison Volquez. I'm just spitballing in here. Those
exactly
reclamation projects that we had every year.
right. So it's like when you get the Pirates with Bob Nutting, who's not willing to spend money to begin with, and then you get a contender, and he has this really strong attribute of these reclamation projects, taking guys who are either washed up you never heard of, and turning them into flipping all-star caliber pitchers, right? I think you just have to sacrifice that. Yeah, you have to sacrifice something, I think, because they're not going to go out and pay someone else because Bob Nutting refuses to pay people. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. It's just, and you know what? Going back to Archer trade, it was so funny because in hindsight, um, it was just one of those unknowingly grim foreshadowings or unknowingly ironic foreshadowings. Because Chris Archer, even going back to his time in Tampa Bay, had been a noted Steelers fan. And so he was really excited to come to Pittsburgh so he could, interact because he had that level of connection with the fans in that regard. And I remember right after he got traded and he was flying in and they had a photo of him getting off the plane and look at what he was wearing, an Antonio
Antonio
Brown
Brown.
Steelers jersey.
Yep.
And you look at what happened to both of those people. Obviously, one of them was just on the field, and the other was off the field. But it's just one of those things you laugh at when you look back on.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. I think because Archer, again, seems like a really good dude. There's not a lot of people who complain about Archer. It's just, it's just things haven't worked out. But then again, like he has that $11 million option for 2021.
We're
Would you
not
pick it
picking
up?
that up.
What did you say?
I said, we're not picking that up.
Really? Because I think we will.
Really? I'm intrigued here. Why do you think we're going to pick that option up?
Okay, Ryan. How many starting pitchers does a baseball team need?
5,
Okay.
obviously.
How many do the Pittsburgh Pirates have?
True.
Right? You have let's see if I can think of any. You have
Trevor
Trevor
Williams,
Williams.
Chad Cool, who's coming
That's
back from Tommy John.
so that's two.
Joe Musgrove,
3.
Stephen Brault,
He's quite
and
he's questionable whether he can stay as a starter.
that's true. But the thing is, it's an 11 some $million option. Who's to say they're gonna pass on that and sign someone else for close to minimum or a couple mil? Especially considering they'll likely be better than Archer has been over the year and a half we've seen. So I don't think the 11 mil would be worth it. Yes, obviously we have 0 rotation, but you also have to remember that JMO will be back. Hopefully. I do believe.
Again, is he someone you're gonna rely on for starts? I mean, again, I haven't heard anything bad about Jameson. Nearly said Jameson Winston, Jameson Tyone, but again, he can't stay healthy, whether it's cancer or
2 Tommy Johns.
or 2 Tommy Johns. I mean,
I get it, but I don't think they're picking it up. They'll just sign somebody else or not sign anyone and just bring them some crap guy from the bullpen. Like they'll try to make Liriano a starter again. I don't even know if Liriano's still with the team anymore.
who knows? And that's another thing. What's going to happen with all these contracts?
Yeah. That's a good point. I think MLB already made a declaration because they were far more optimistic that we would have a season at that point. But they did make a declaration that this counts as a year on the contract. Obviously, the players aren't getting paid. So that means that the Mookie Betts trade would mean absolutely nothing. I do believe, unless something changed in that regard, this still counts as a year.
That's a good point.
Because the season technically started because they've been playing about 3 weeks of spring training games. I think. So
I don't know. It doesn't look good any way you look at it.
No, it does. It does not. I think that's about all that could be said about about the grim realities of baseball and the Pittsburgh Pirates on this very evening. This has been episode 6 of the Pittsburgh Sportscast. Neglected to mention that in the intro, but this is our 6th show. We're gonna keep doing this as long as we have sports to cover. So if you're watching this on our YouTube,
one quick thing though.
Oh, before we get to the outro, Chris got one more thing. What is it?
If anyone listening, you comment us or we have an email, you can email us until we have actual Pittsburgh sports again, which still maybe we're looking at maybe another month, 2 months. Write us in if you would want us to cover, some European soccer, because as kind of mentioned upon earlier, Ryan and I are soccer fans. We have our teams are based in England, though, so we could cover some English soccer. I'm sure we could cover the Bundesliga because I know that's going on. Don't know what's happening with La Liga, which is the league in Spain. But if that's something you guys would like to hear us talk about, or just have something else to talk about while we get back into hockey and football, because realistically, baseball looks like isn't happening, as you've listened to this entire podcast and probably have figured out by now. At least I would hope. Let us know if you would, like us to talk about some soccer or some other sports that, that we could talk about.
Yeah, great point, Chris. All right. And with that, if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, make sure to subscribe to the Pittsburgh Sportscast. Comment below any questions, suggestions, comments, whatever. I don't care if you tell us we're crap. We love that criticism. We always love to improve the show. Also, you can email us, as Chris said. We can be found at pittsburghsportspodcast@gmail.com. Tweet us at PGH Sportscast. And with that, my name is Ryan.
And I'm Chris.
And we will see you next time on the Pittsburgh Sportscast. So long, everybody.